All right, welcome everyone to the Crowd Management Doctor, and this is another edition of our Patron Management Institute learning program for the Certificate in Patron Management. And this module will focus in on fire and smoke related safety issues for those working at different venues. And so let's get started. This module will focus on identifying the different types of fires, how to respond to a fire or a smoke-based emergency, and identifying the steps in the venue evacuation process to help limit the risk of patron injuries and venue damage. You will learn how to respond to different fires and how to prevent fires from spreading in the venue. Throughout this module, you will examine different fire scenarios that happen within venues and how employees and other personnel were able to help prevent a fire from spreading. You will learn steps in the evacuation process and how to effectively communicate amongst employees and management. The module objectives are as follows. 1. Recognize the dangers fire pose to large venues. 2. Identify different types of fires, whether it's Class A, B, C, etc. 3. Explain how to respond to a fire/smoke-based emergency. 4. Identify techniques to use fire-related equipment. And number 5, identify the steps in the evacuation process. Let's go over the terms you need to know as a patron leader. Cause of fire. The factors that create a fire. The factors may include intentional or unintentional actions or an act of nature that could cause a fire. What is the definition of fire? Fire is combustion or burning, in which substances combine chemically with oxygen from the air and typically give out bright light, heat, and smoke. A fire drill. A practical, supervised, mandatory evacuation of a building in response to a possible fire. Fire-related death. An instant in which a person is killed in a fire, or whether it's by flames, smoke, or fire-related crowd issues such as stampede. The fire triangle, the model for understanding the chemical reaction which occurs to create a fire. Fire triangle is composed of 3 elements: fuel, heat, and oxygen. Let's go over what dangers a fire might pose on a large venue. Before getting into the dangers of fire pose in large venues, it's important to understand what fire is. Fire is a combustion or burning in which substances combine chemically with oxygen from the air and typically give out bright light, heat, and smoke. You have seen fires from burning buildings or perhaps controlled fires from camping or personal fire pits. But there are 4 stages to fire that we want to be able to cover, even if you think you know what fire is about. Number 1, ignition. That's fuel, oxygen, and heat form a sustained chemical reaction. 2, growth. From the initial flame used as a heat source, additional fuel is used to ignite. A fully developed fire is fire increases in spread and cause from the original fuel. At this point, fire reaches its peak in temperature from the oxygen. This results in heat damage. And the last part is called decay. That's a burnout. Fire used all the available fuels and temperature decreases to the point where it becomes less intense. Think about it in terms of your own experience. If you're trying to light a fire in the fireplace, you first gather the combustible materials and open the flue so air can come in. Then you start the ignition process by lighting a match. The initial flame is moved to the paper, cardboard, or whatever you're using with the firewood to have the flame grow. Once the flames take off, the fire is fully engulfed and it becomes a raging fire. If more wood is not added, the fire will decay until all the flames and embers cool. As fire goes through these 4 stages, it can spread by contact with additional fuel sources or heating objects until the objects begin to burn. To understand the dangers that fire poses on large venues, it is important to understand the hazard that venues can impose. Large gathering of people at an event can be considered a hazard. When a fire occurs at the large venues or events, spectators can panic. In this case, people will create their own emergency evacuation and can develop a mindset of everyone for themselves. Overcrowding grandstands or crowded areas can result in injuries when people start panicking and start moving in a uniform area. You should be familiar with the evacuation plan for your venue. It is your responsibility to keep people calm as you guide them to safety. The video link is an example of a fire that occurred in 1996 between LSU and Auburn. As you are watching this video, please pay attention to the fire that is occurring next to the game and think about what you would do as a patron leader if you saw that fire. Hopefully your first response is call 911. As a patron leader, you must understand what produces a fire. A fire can occur when the three elements are present: oxygen to sustain combustion, enough heat to raise the material to its ignition temperature, and fire needs some sort of fuel or combustible material. When facing emergency situations involving fire, it is important to understand the elements that go into producing a fire. Oxygen, heat, and the fuel are what we've talked about before. For the fire to start, there must be a source of material to burn, or otherwise known as a fuel source. Fuel is any kind of combustible material such as paper, oil, gas, etc. Fuel in the fire triangle is characterized by its moisture content, size, shape, and quantity. For ignition to take place, heat must be present. Heat is responsible for the spread and maintenance of fire. Heat removes the moisture from nearby fuel in surrounding areas, enabling the fire to travel and develop its path. While fuel and heat are present in the fire triangle, oxygen needs to be present to keep the fire burning. As the fire burns, it reacts with oxygen by releasing the heat and generating combustion. Now that you have a better understanding of the elements of the fire triangle, here are several different types of fires. Class A refers to solids. Class A fires involve solid material. Class A fires are one of the most common fire types because solid material is a common fuel and hard to eliminate. A good practice that can be used to limit the risk of Class A fire is establishing good housekeeping within the venue or office. This can mean storing materials properly, waste management, emptying out the trash, things like that. Common solid material for Class A fires include wood, paper, cloth, rubber, plastic, things like that. Class A fires are extinguished with all extinguishers, including water-based extinguishers. They also can be put out with chemical-based ones, but they're one of the only ones that water-based extinguishers can work with. Remember, water-based extinguishers should not be used near any electrical equipment. Class B fires involve liquids. Class B fires involve both flammable liquids and other possible hazardous liquids. These liquids can be fluids, liquids like oil and gas, chemicals, anything that can be flammable or explosive within a workplace. To minimize the risk of Class B fires, you need to know if flammable liquids are being used. Flammable liquids need to be properly stored and follow the COSH, Control of Substance Hazards to Health Regulations requirement. COSH, C-O-S-H-H, are a legal requirement for any hazardous substance. These assessments are enforced by the venue's health and safety executive to prevent the risk of potential fires. Other assessments include storing hazard liquid safely within the workplace, labeling containers, keeping away from sources that could ignite the liquid, and being generally smart about liquids. Class B fires are fueled by gasoline, grease, tar, oils, oil-based paints, and solvents. The best type of extinguisher to use for a Class B fire are foam or powder extinguishers. Next, we have Class C. Class C refers to electrical-related fires. Class C fires involve energized electrical equipment. It is important for employees to make sure all electrical equipment is installed correctly, inspected, and maintained to reduce the risk of Class C fires. When an electrical device is on fire, if possible, without compromising your own safety, immediately unplug the device. Then try to extinguish the flames or smoke or whatever is coming with a fire extinguisher. Class C fires can come from computers, motors, transformers, electrical appliance like kitchen venting hoods, a bounce house blower, things like that. It could also be from lithium batteries now. Carbon dioxide and dry powder extinguishers can be used for Class C fires, and they're the most effective ones. The next area is Class D metals. Class D fires involve metals. Metals may not be known as a source of material for fire, but are considered a conductor for spreading fire as well. When fire is present, metals will begin to soften and melt at high temperatures. This can be a problem with metal joists and columns that hold the venue structure together. Class D fires can be fueled by the following elements: magnesium, titanium, lithium, I just mentioned batteries. That includes personal electronics such as cell phone, laptops, e-cigarettes, scooters, things like that. Any metal that can spread a fire is also a concern. Although one may think water extinguishers could be used here, since the metal is solid, water acts as an accelerant for metal fires. The proper way to extinguish Class D fires is by using a dry powder extinguisher. Depending on the size of the fire, dry earth, ground, soil, dirt, or sand can be another alternative to put out those fires. Class K fires are cooking fats and oils. Class K fires involve cooking fats and oils and all sorts of stuff like this, and it can be caused by deep fat frying pans with fires inside, spilled oil, flammable oil near different sources in the kitchen, things like that. To prevent Class K fires from happening, employees should be aware of cooking sources that are on and their temperature. The ideal temperature for a deep fryer, as an example, should be between 350 and 360 degrees Fahrenheit. Employees working in the kitchen should never leave food unattended and turn off all heating sources that are not being used. Class K fires use cooking oil as their fuel. The type of extinguishers to use during these fires are wet chemical extinguishers or a fire blanket for small Class K fires. The use of fire extinguishers and types used is what's covered next. Before getting into the different types of fire extinguishers used for different classes of fires, you must first understand how to use a fire extinguisher. You should use the PASS acronym to coordinate the steps when using a pull fire extinguisher. First, pull the pin on the fire extinguisher. The A is aim the nozzle at the base of the fire. The first S is squeeze the trigger to release the product. And the last S of PASS is sweep the nozzle from side to side slowly. And as we go forward, there's a sidebar that you can see here from OSHA, which highlights how to put out a fire using a fire extinguisher. As a patron leader, you should look at the work area to determine these 4 things: the location of fire extinguishers, the nearest smoke detector, the location of pull fire alarms, and the sound the fire alarm might make. There are several different types of extinguishers that are used for different types of fires, as previously mentioned. They're labeled either A, B, C, D, or K, depending on which types of fires they can be used to fight. 1. Water and foam extinguishers. These extinguish fires by taking away the heat element of the fire triangle. Foam separates the oxygen element from the other elements in fire. Water and fire extinguishers should be used for Class A fires only. This extinguisher should not be used on other class of fires because it can cause the fire to actually spread or create a shocking hazard. Carbon dioxide extinguishers extinguish fires by taking away the oxygen element of the fire triangle and remove the heat with a very cold discharge. Carbon dioxide extinguishers can be used for both Class B and C fires. Dry chemical extinguishers. They extinguish fires by interrupting the chemical reaction of the fire triangle. Dry chemical extinguishers are effective on Class A, B, and C fires in creating a barrier between the oxygen element and the fuel element. If used for the wrong class of fire, the chemical can reignite the fire after initially being extinguished, hopefully successfully. Number 4 is wet chemical extinguishers. These extinguish fires by removing the heat from the fire triangle and preventing reignition by creating a barrier between the oxygen and the fuel element. Wet chemical extinguishers can be used on Class K fires when handling kitchen fires from cooking equipment or the oils that are used. Number 5 is halogenated extinguishers, also known as clean agent extinguishers. They extinguish fires by interrupting chemical reactions and removing heat from the fire triangle. Halogenated extinguishers are effective on Class A, B, and C fires. Number 6 is dry powder extinguishers. These are similar to dry chemical extinguishers and extinguish fire by separating fuel from the oxygen to remove heat from the fire triangle. Dry powder extinguishers are used from Class D fires only. As patron leader, make sure you read the labels located on the fire extinguisher. Reading the label on the extinguisher will indicate the appropriate use of the extinguisher for each class of fire, and you'll be able to know if I have a certain type of fire, what type of fire extinguisher I should use, and where I might find it in the building. So what to do during a fire? When working for an event or a venue, it is important to know what to do during a fire or smoke-related emergency. As a patron leader, you have gained knowledge on the different types of fire, how to use an extinguisher, and different types of extinguishers used for those fires. Although this is great background knowledge, it is also important to understand and acknowledge the proper safety protocols. To limit the risk of injury to any person from fire-related situation, here are some instructions you need to remember. 1. Know the fire or smoke policies and procedures for your venue, such as when to call 911, when to contact supervisors, what is the code for a venue evacuation when it is called, those kind of things. 2. Know where the fire poles are located in your venue. 3. Know where the fire extinguishers are and how to operate them. 4. Know the procedures for contacting a supervisor. Number 5. Know the policies for disabled and wheelchair-using patrons and area of refuge. 6. Use stairs when evacuating and avoid using escalators, elevators, things like that. Number 7. Know a secondary exit if closed doors or handles are warm or blocked by fire or smoke. How can you get out a different way? Number 8. When escaping through smoke, advise people to get low and underneath the smoke. 9. Listen to your supervisor, and if an evacuation is called, know the area where your section should meet outside the building and direct patrons to go to that location. Number 10. Never leave your section until all the patrons have been evacuated. That is critical. In case you or your patrons' clothes were to catch on fire, remember to do the following. Stop, drop, and roll. Stop what you are doing. Drop to the ground and cover your face. Roll over and go back and forth until the flames go out. Once the flames are out, cool the burned skin with water for 3 to 5 minutes and seek medical attention. As a patron leader, it is your duty to make sure fans are evacuated safely. Here are some key points just to keep in mind. 1. Make sure your section is clear before evacuating the building. 2. Assist people who are disabled to the nearest emergency exit after everyone else has been evacuated from the section. That might sound harsh, but there is logic behind that. 3. Advise people to use the stairs when evacuating instead of elevators, escalators, or people movers. 4. Monitor any hazards that can cause people to trip or any other combustibles that might keep the fire going. 5. Look for lost children or disoriented individuals. Number 6. Stay in contact with your supervisors. In conclusion, during this module you have learned the following: the fire triangle and how you need heat, oxygen, and a fuel source to stay alive for a fire to stay alive. If any one of the elements is missing, the fire will die. There are various types of fires based on the fuels that ignite and keep that fire flames going. Specific fire extinguishers are used for specific types of fires, and know the difference. Patron leaders need to carefully monitor their areas. The key to stopping a fire in the early detection and then to extinguish the fire before it spreads. Patron leaders need to be alert for flames and smoke. Patron leaders need to immediately contact their supervisor if there is a concern. Don't worry if you might be misplaced. If there is a concern, contact them. If there's any active flames or if it looks out of control, contact 911. No patron leader will ever be reprimanded or disciplined for reporting a good faith fire or smoke emergency. And care needs to be taken to safely evacuate patrons to the safe area identified by a supervisor. That is part of the evacuation plan. That's why it's so important for you to go through and know what the plan is, ask questions about the plan so you could actually execute the plan in case of an emergency. That's also why we do fire drills and things like that, to make sure you are prepared and you know how to respond. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation on fire and smoke related safety. Remember, if there is a fire, if there is something that's going on, 911 and contacting your supervisor are the critical first steps. But before that, make sure your area is safe as possible. In this video, we have not given specific examples of fires that have occurred. There have been a number of fires, and some of these fires, especially in Europe and in England, but also in the United States, have been very devastating for venues. Oftentimes, those fires occur because of trash buildup. Keeping your area clean is important. Making sure there's not a lot of combustibles around is important. If you see something that doesn't look right, call your supervisor. Call for custodial, whatever it might be, to try to eliminate a hazard. And always, always, always make sure fire doors are never blocked and that exit ways are never blocked in order to make sure people can evacuate the venue in a safe manner. That's it for me. Thank you for listening, and let's stay safe out there, everyone. Bye-bye.